A vibrant village with bustling markets, as Lila tends to her roses while young Rosalind plays nearby. Lila falls gravely ill and whispers her final words to Elias, asking him to protect Rosalind. Elias, mourning his wife, reassures Rosalind of his love and promises a bright future. 2 years after Lila's passing, Elias remarried. The woman, Clara, was as stunning as a painted portrait, but carried a heart cold as winter. Clara brought with her 2 daughters, Agnes and Ruth, who mirrored their mother's sharp features and mean-spirited nature. At first, Clara pretended to be warm and kind, winning Elias's trust. But once she settled into her role as mistress of the house, her true nature emerged. The grand house that once felt like a sanctuary turned into a place of dread for Rosalind. Clara's disdain for Rosalind began subtly. The girl's dresses, once embroidered with care by her late mother, were deemed too extravagant and replaced with plain, worn-out frocks. Rosalind's room, a sunlit haven overlooking the garden, was reassigned to Clara's daughters, while Rosalind was moved to the cold, damp attic. Elias, consumed by his business travels, failed to notice the changes. Clara ensured her cruelty was veiled under a guise of discipline and propriety whenever he was home. She must learn humility, Clara would say with a saccharine smile. Elias, trusting Clara, nodded and dismissed any concerns. Rosalind, however, bore the brunt of Clara's wrath. She was forced to rise before dawn to complete an endless list of chores, scrubbing floors until her hands were raw, carrying heavy water buckets from the well, and tending to the sprawling garden that Clara took pride in showing off to guests. Meanwhile, Agnes and Ruth idled their days away, mocking Rosalind and treating her like a servant. Despite the hardships, Rosalind found solace in the garden. Her mother had loved roses, planting dozens of bushes in hues of red, white, and pink. Tending to the roses reminded Rosalind of her mother's gentle touch and her father's happier days. She would hum lullabies her mother once sang, finding comfort in the flowers' delicate beauty. One day, while pruning the roses, Rosalind met an old woman with silver hair and wise, twinkling eyes. She was dressed humbly, carrying a basket of herbs. The woman watched Rosalind work with a mix of admiration and sadness. "You have a kind heart, child," the woman said. "These flowers thrive under your care, even when the world around you doesn't." Rosalind, startled but grateful for the stranger's kind words, shared her story. The old woman listened intently, her eyes narrowing at the mention of Clara's cruelty. "You mustn't lose hope," the woman said, placing a small, silver charm in Rosalind's hand. It was shaped like a rose. "Keep this close. It will remind you of your strength. And remember, kindness will always outshine cruelty." Rosalind thanked the woman, her heart feeling lighter than it had in months. Clara, meanwhile, grew restless. She despised Rosalind's resilience, her quiet beauty, and the way Elias still spoke fondly of her. Clara wanted her daughters to inherit everything, and Rosalind was an obstacle. One day, Clara devised a plan. She informed Elias that Rosalind had been neglecting her chores and acting out. "The girl needs discipline," Clara said with feigned concern. "I fear she's becoming spoiled." With Elias's reluctant approval, Clara's punishments grew harsher. Rosalind was forbidden from attending village gatherings, denied meals, and made to sleep on the floor of the attic without blankets. Clara relished in Rosalind's suffering, but the girl's spirit remained unbroken. News spread of a grand ball hosted by the prince, who was seeking a bride. All eligible maidens were invited, and the excitement in the village was palpable. Agnes and Ruth were beside themselves with glee, convinced one of them would win the prince's heart. Clara spared no expense in preparing their gowns, jewelry, and even hiring a carriage. Rosalind, too, dreamed of attending the ball, if only to escape her dreary life for one night. But Clara crushed that dream swiftly. "You?" Clara sneered. "In your rags. Do you think the prince would even look at you? No, you will stay home and clean up after us. On the night of the ball, Clara and her daughters departed in high spirits, leaving Rosalind alone. She wept bitterly, her tears soaking into the cold stone floor. As she cried, the silver charm in her hand grew warm. A soft voice interrupted her sobs. Why do you cry, child? Rosalind looked up to see the old woman from the garden standing in the attic doorway. But this time, the woman seemed different, radiant and otherworldly. Who are you? Rosalind asked, her voice trembling. I am someone who wishes to help, the woman said, smiling. With a wave of her hand, Rosalind's tattered dress transformed into a gown of shimmering gold, and delicate glass slippers adorned her feet. A carriage, crafted from a pumpkin and pulled by white horses, appeared outside. Go to the ball, the woman said. But remember, the magic will fade at midnight. At the ball, Rosalind was the embodiment of grace and beauty. The prince, captivated by her presence, asked her to dance, and the two spent the evening in each other's company. Rosalind felt a joy she hadn't known in years. Clara's suspicion, Clara, watching from afar, grows uneasy, sensing something familiar about Rosalind. But as the clock struck midnight, she fled, leaving behind only one glass slipper. The prince, determined to find her, declared he would marry the woman whose foot fit the slipper. When the prince arrived at Clara's house, Agnes and Ruth eagerly tried on the slipper, but it fit neither of them. Clara, desperate to secure her daughter's future, tried to hide Rosalind, locking her in the attic. But the silver charm in Rosalind's hand glowed brightly, guiding the prince to her. Agnes and Ruth's attempts. A humorous yet tense sequence of the stepsisters trying to fit into the slipper. The prince's arrival. The prince and his entourage arrive at Clara's house, creating a stir. Rosalind's silver charm. The charm glows brightly, catching the attention of one of the soldiers. The discovery. The soldier hears Rosalind's muffled cries and unlocks the attic door. The slipper fits. Rosalind steps forward, placing her foot into the slipper as everyone watches in awe. Clara's downfall. Clara's lies are exposed, and the prince orders her and her daughters to be held accountable. Clara's punishment. Clara, Agnes, and Ruth are banished, forced to leave their life of luxury behind. Rosalind's reunion. Elias, realizing his neglect, tearfully apologizes to Rosalind. A royal wedding. A grand celebration, as Rosalind and the prince marry in the palace gardens. Just as served, the camera shows Clara and her daughters living humbly, hinting at their grudging remorse. A visit to the village. Rosalind, now a princess, returns to the village to help those in need. Rosalind, now a princess, chose mercy. Clara, Agnes, and Ruth were banished from the village, left to live humbly and reflect on their actions. Rosalind plants new roses in the palace garden, ensuring her mother's legacy lives on. Rosalind leaves the silver charm on her mother's grave as a tribute. The old woman appears one last time, proud of Rosalind's journey. The camera pans over the blooming rose garden, a metaphor for Rosalind's strength. The couple walks hand in hand, talking about building a kingdom founded on kindness. Rose charm glowing faintly, a reminder of magic, love, and hope.